Hello, welcome to Pass the Turn with me, the resident special guest of the channel, and today you're in for a treat. I'll be doing an EDH Commander deck tech of my Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow Ninja deck. Let's get straight to it. Yuriko, the Tiger Shadow. She's a legendary human ninja. She costs 1 blue-black and has 2 insane abilities. She's got Commander Ninjutsu. It costs blue and a black, and you can basically avoid command attacks by ninjutsuing her from the command zone in place of an unblocked attacker you control, which then triggers her disgusting ability of whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to that card's converted mana cost. So this deck is all about ninjas attacking, ninjutsuing Yuriko into the mix, and dealing massive damage through card draws. So let's get to it. Just mention that Yuriko was first printed in Commander 2018, I think, in the Amanatu Fate Shifter Precon. And at the time, I think it had 2 ninjas in the deck as well as this one. And only when Wizards of the Coast printed Modern Horizons did we get a handful of amazing Pedigree Ninjas to use in this deck. It's what's made it all possible thanks to that set. We could have done it before, but it would have been a lot harder, given the fact that there are not many ninjas out there. There was about 7. Anyway, let's get to it. So, first section, ramp, always integral in a deck. So all the ramp in my deck is artifact ramp. This is a fast, explosive deck. You're going to be drawing potentially numerous cards every turn from Yuriko's triggers. So I don't have much card draw. I just have general ramp, and the mana curve of this deck is so low. Your opponents aren't going to keep you around for very long once they see what you're up to. So it's all about just smashing face from the start. So, first up, classic Soul Ring, costs 1, taps for 2. What more? Also a card that I haven't yet acquired. Arcane Signet, similar, I think it costs 2 and taps for 1. Great card. Next up, we have Talisman of Dominance, cost 2, you can add 1 generic mana, or you can add a blue or black, but you have to take 1 damage from the talisman. And then we have the Dimir, Signet, Keyrune and Locket. So we've got the Locket, which costs 3, taps are blue and black, or you can pay either 4 blue or black in any combination, sacrifice it to draw 2 cards, so it's a bit of card draw if you need it. We've got the Keyrune, costs 3, taps for blue and black, and you can pay blue-black to turn it into a 2/2 horror artifact creature until end of turn, and it's unblockable, which is perfect for this deck. We need unblockable creatures. And lastly, Signet. You have to pay, cost 2, pay 1, tap it, add blue and black to your mana pool. Perfect. Standard ramp, nothing special here. I will mention one thing. There are multiple deck lists for this commander, so popular on the internet. There are 3 cards you will see in 99%, especially the sort of competitive EDH decks, that I do not have. I won't be purchasing them. This is purely because of cost, and I can't justify it, and I don't think they're that important to my deck. I know this deck's amazing as it is, so before anybody starts piping up saying why haven't you got this, that, it's due to cost. I am not going to be purchasing these cards, and that is a Sensei's Divining Top. Nah. Cyclonic Rift. There's no real replacement for it, but I'm not going to buy it. It's ridiculously overpriced for what it is. I have very similar cards that do an okay job. And the last one is Scroll Rack. As amazing as it would be in this deck, I'm not paying the extortion for it. It's just not worth it. I like the element of surprise as well in this deck. It's not always about knowing what's coming. So that's out the way, ramp's done. We're going to move on to the next section that I'm calling Can't Block This. So now we have potential unblockable creatures, which is what we want, so that we can ninjitsu ninjas in and Yuriko to get her triggers. So first up, we have Baleful Strix. It's not unblockable, it's got flying and death touch though. It costs blue-black, it's a 1/1, and when it enters, you draw a card as well. I'll take that. Chances are people, if they've got flying blockers, they're not going to want to lose them to my little owl thing here. It's got death touch. Next up, Cloaked Herald. This is a 1-drop, so all my unblockable creatures I believe are sort of 1-drops. Get them out quick, get them swinging, get ninjitsu in, and we're away for massive damage. So Cloaked Herald. It's just a 1/1, can't be blocked. Next up we have Slither Blade, another 1-drop. It's a 1/2, nothing more to it. Next up, 1-drop Goodall Lurker. Can't be blocked. It's a 1/1, but you can pay a blue to megamorph it as a 2/2 face down creature for 3. Yeah, so you pay 3 to morph it as a 2/2, then you can pay the megamorph cost and give it an extra 1/1 counter when you turn it face up. I'm not going to do that. Just use it as an unblockable. Next up, Triton Shorestalker. Another 1-drop, 1/1, can't be blocked. Fairy Seer up next. This is a 1/1 with flying, so it's not unblockable, but it has flying. And when it enters, you can scry 2. So this deck's all about scrying as well, because we want to know what's coming. If we can manipulate the top of our deck to produce some big mana cost cards, that's going to produce big damage. That's what we want. People crying. Okay. Next, not an unblockable, but a very good card for this deck. Tetsuku Umezawa Fugitive. Costs 1 and a blue. It's a 1/3 human rogue, and it says creatures you control with power or toughness 1 or less can't be blocked. So I have a lot of cheap ninjas. They've got low power or toughness. This is going to help all of my creatures pretty much get through. Now we have Phantom Ninja. Costs 1 blue. It's a 2/2 ninja already, and it just can't be blocked. So this could trigger Yuriko straight away. Ingenious Infiltrator up next. Costs blue and a black. It's a 1/3 unblockable spirit, but it has transmute. So I can pay 1 blue-black, discard it from my hand. Then I can search my library for a card with the same converted mana cost. And then last up, Changeling Outcast. It just costs 1 black. It's a Changeling, so it counts as a ninja already. And it can't be blocked, but it also can't block. Whatever. Who needs to block anyway? This is all about full frontal assault. Okay, moving on. Pedigree Ninjas is the next group of cards. So these are all my official ninja cards. So let's get straight into it with, first up, Inkai's Servant of Oni. This is a rat ninja, it costs 4 black, but the ninjutsu ability cost is 3 black. So we're going to be basically trying to ninjutsu the ninjas in to save cost. And it's a 5/4. Whenever it deals damage to deals combat damage to a player, I can put a creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under my control. So I can steal creatures, turn them into ninjas, and destroy opponents that way. You can also pay 1 and a black, to regenerate it. Okay, next up, Throat Slitter. You'll see that all these ninjas have lovely welcoming names. Another rat ninja, costs 4 and a black. Ninjutsu's only 2 and a black though. And whenever Throat Slitter deals combat damage to a player, destroy target non-black creature that player controls. Decent enough. So all these ninjas, you'll realise that they all have the ninjutsu ability, but they also have at least 1 damage ability. Once they do damage, it gets real. Next up, Okiba Gang Shinobi. 3 black. Ninjutsu is 3 and a black. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards 2 cards. Skull Snatcher. Got Skull Snatcher up next. Another rat ninja, costs 1 and a black, or just a single black mana for ninjutsu. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, remove up to 2 target cards in that player's graveyard from the game. Horrible if people like graveyard recursion. No names mentioned here. Next up, Ingenious Infiltrator. It costs 2 blue black. It's got ninjutsu for just blue and black. And whenever a ninja I control deals combat damage to a player, I get to draw a card. So it's a bit of extra card draw. Fallen Shinobi. Lovely looking card. You don't look happy. Costs 3 blue black. Ninjutsu is 2 blue black. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top 2 cards of their library. Until end of turn, I can play those cards without paying their mana costs. Perfect. Mist Syndicate Naga up next. It's 2 and a blue to play. Ninjutsu in for 2 and a blue as well. What's the point? Anyway, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create a token that's a copy of Mist Syndicate Naga. So damage your opponents with this, you get another one. You'll have an army of these before you know it. Okay, up next, Mistblade Shinobi. Costs 2 and a blue. Ninjutsu for 1 blue. Perfect. Whenever Mistblade Shinobi deals combat damage to a player, I can return a target creature that player controls to its owner's hand. So, yeah. Return a creature of theirs to the opponent's hand. Gets one out the way, I guess. Allowing for more unblockable ninja damage. Moving on to Ninja of the Deep Hours. Costs 3 and a blue. Ninjutsu for 1 and a blue. Whenever Ninja of the Deep Hours deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So it's another card draw one. Up next, this is a good one. Sakashima's Student. Costs 2 blue, ninjutsu for 1 and a blue. And it's a 0/0. However, you can have it enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. So anybody's creature they control, this can become a copy of it, but it's still a ninja. So this can go off. Amazing. Nothing more to be said on that. Okay, now up next is a really good card. Higa the Still Wind. Costs 3 blue. It's got ninjutsu for 2 blue. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, I can search my library for a ninja card. I have to reveal it. It goes into my hand. Then I get to shuffle my library. And I can also pay 2. And it says, pay 2, target ninja creature can't be blocked this turn. So I can get a free ninja unblocked attack through just by paying 2 with this guy out. Awesome. Last one, Moonblade Shinobi. Costs 3 and a blue. Ninjutsu for 2 and a blue. And whenever Moonblade Shinobi deals combat damage to a player, create a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with flying. Not bad. Not bad. If we can turn all those tokens into ninjas as well, we're laughing. That's a 3/2 as well. So yeah, that's all the ninjas. That's the main part of the deck, I guess. So now we're going to look at ways that we can manipulate our top deck so that when we get unblocked ninjas through, that we ensure maximum damage. So moving on, this section's called Scry to make your opponents cry and then die. So we've got quite a few here. Let's start off with the only artifact in this section, and that is a crystal ball. It's a budget option for something like a Sensei's Divining Top. It's not as good, but it's not as expensive. So this costs 3, and I can pay 1, tap it to scry 2. So I can look at the top 2 cards, shuffle them how I want, and that's just an extra scry option. Next up, Diabolic Vision. This costs blue and a black, and it says, look at the top 5 cards of your library and put one of them into your hand. Put the remaining 4 on top of your library in any order. Nice. Contingency Plan costs 1 and a blue. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any order. So you're probably not going to be ditching anything to the grave, you're just going to be shuffling those 5 cards around to how you predict they're going to come out. It's alright sorting the top of your deck out, but you need to ensure that you're going to get attacks through, so you want the best cards obviously on the top. Portent up next, costs 1 blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your target player's library, so you're probably going to target yourself. Then either shuffle that library or put those cards on top of that library in any order. Draw a card at the beginning of next turn's upkeep. Is what it is. Ponder up next, costs 1 blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put them back in any order. You can then shuffle it if you want to, and then draw a card. So an ideal situation for that one would probably be to stick a land or something, just making sure you've always got lands as well. On top, draw the land, leave some nasty high cost cards underneath for the damage step. It's alright running away with these massive high cost cards, but if you haven't got mana to play anything, there's no point. Plus, here's a nice tip for this deck. Sometimes it's nice to mess with your opponents. If you know there's a land coming out, build up the tension, their hearts will sink, and then they see the land. Makes for great pictures, I tell ya. Limdal's Vault up next. Look at the top. This one is, it's time consuming, but it's so worth playing. It costs blue and black, and you look at the top 5 cards of your library, and it says, as many times as you choose, you can pay 1 life to put those cards on the bottom of your library, and then look at the next top 5 cards of your library. So you can do this till you find a set of 5 cards that's just going to inflict pain beyond pain. And all it says after that is effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. It's worth sacrificing a few life to find a combination of 5 cards in your deck that is just going to hurt your opponents. Or search for stuff you actually want in your hand, because every card you draw off Yuriko's ability is coming to your hand anyway, so that's why I don't have much card draw in this deck, because you're going to be drawing ample amounts potentially every turn. Brainstorm up next. Cost 1 blue. Draw 3 cards, then take 2 cards from your hand and put them on top of your library in any order. So that's any 2 cards from your hand. Pick the best ones. You're going to be drawing them back if you get damage through anyway. Yeah, enough said on that. Now, this one. Okay, up next is a card. I want to say thanks to the mystery booster set that recently released, a lot of the cards that I needed for this deck or already owned in this deck were reprinted at a much cheaper cost. So now this deck's more affordable than ever, and this is one of the cards from Mystery Booster. Soothsaying. It costs 1 blue, and it's an enchantment that you can pay 3 blue to shuffle your library. I don't think I'll be using that effect, but the next one, you can pay X, look at the top X cards of your library and put them back in any order. Don't need to say anything else. Manipulate the top of your deck how you want it, however many times you want, and just make sure that there's massive damage coming. Okay, up next we've got 2 creatures. They do the job. First up is Sage Owl, costs 1 and a blue. It's a 1/1 with flying. That's what we want. And when it comes into play, you look at the top 4 cards of your library, put them back in any order. Double bubble with that one. Spire Owl next, 1 and a blue to play it. It's a 1/1 flying again, and when it comes into play, look at the top 4 cards of your library, put them back in any order. So I think they're pretty much exactly the same, aren't they? Yeah. And obviously, these are good creatures because if you can get an unblocked flying attack through, you can return this to your hand in place of a ninja, getting a Yuriko trigger, replay this, manipulate your deck. It's a never-ending pain circle. Vicious cycle, we call it. Propaganda up next. Costs 2 and a blue. Each turn, each creature cannot attack you unless its controller plays an additional 2 for that creature. So this is just basically there to prevent, hopefully, my opponents from attacking me. I don't really want to be forced to block with my ninjas, losing them in the process, so this makes it harder. So I've got a few cards like this. It's not essential to a deck like this, but it's just extra giggles, let's say, for them. Well, for me, sorry, not for them. No one cares about your opponents. Okay, up next, another enchantment. Dissipation Field, costs 2 blue. Whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. So if you've got a nasty creature on your opponent's board, let it attack you. Take some damage, send it back to the hand for a turn, why not? Last enchantment in this little group of cards is amazing. It costs 1 and a blue. It's called Smoke Shroud. It's essential to ninjas. It's an enchantment aura. You enchant a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has flying. Perfect. But at the end it says, when a ninja enters the battlefield under your control, you may return Smoke Shroud from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. So unless this gets exiled or whatever, it's coming back on ninjas, giving it +1/+1 and flying. Amazing. Right, so that was Scry to Cry and then Die. Up next we've got a couple of tutors. I don't really run too many tutors in this deck. I've got a couple of options here, and it's, you know, you're drawing so many cards and scrying so much, you can manipulate to draw cards you desperately need. But I think in this deck, nothing you're ever going to desperately need. Every card has its purpose, and it's, like I said, fast, explosive. You're going to be done before you know it. Up first, costs 1 blue. It's called Trickery Charm. So this is an instant, and you get to choose one of these options. Target creature gains flying until end of turn. Yeah, fair enough. Or target creature's type becomes the creature type of your choice to end a turn, so you can just turn something into a ninja. Or look at the top 4 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. So you can either give a creature flying, turn it into a ninja, or scry 4 cards for massive damage. Mystical Tutor up next, costs 1 blue, and it's just search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, shuffle your library, put the card on top of it. So that could be anything. Yeah, instant or sorcery. You're going to get what you need, obviously. Or just look for one with a high casting cost for massive damage. And the only one I'm missing physically at the moment, I think, is Scheming Symmetry. So I think it costs 1 black. You and one other opponent search your library for a card. I think you put it into your hand. Let's have a look. Oh dear, unprepared. Very unprepared. Scheming Symmetry, yeah. You search your library for a card. And so it's the same as Mystical Tutor, except you can choose any card, but it goes on the top of your library, so you know you're going to be drawing it next. At the cost of someone else drawing a card as well, but what can they do against these ninjas? Okay, moving on. We have... Okay, next section is how you're going to basically turn every single creature on the board into a ninja, and there's also an artifact here to reduce casting cost of ninjas, and there's something else. Oh yeah, giving them another keyword ability. So let's start off with Arcane Adaptation. This costs 2 and a blue, so it enters the battlefield. You choose a creature type, obviously ninjas, you're not an idiot. Creatures you control of the chosen type in addition to their other types. So, and it says the same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So everything's a ninja, end of, as long as this enchantment's around. Next up, we have Xenograph, costs 4 and a blue, so a bit more expensive. It enters, you choose a creature type, ninjas, let's not, mess about. Each creature you control is the chosen type in addition to its other types. So what's good is, with those 2 cards, they're ninjas, but also they retain any other creature types they had before, just in case you need it. I don't think there's anything that would mess me up in that regard in this deck. Okay, next up, Conspiracy, costs 3, black. So you, as it comes into play, you choose a creature type. Creature cards you own that aren't in play, creature spells you control, and creatures you control are the chosen type. So, it doesn't say anything about retaining their other type, so I believe this would just turn everything into a ninja, but I'm not complaining. And last up, we have an artifact, Urza's Incubator. It's not essential to this deck. I had it, I wasn't using it, I thought, man, I'm not sure. I'm guessing it would apply to the ninjutsu cost as well, because it's just a different type of casting cost. So when it enters, you choose a creature type. You're going to choose ninjas. Whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, it costs 2 generic less to play. I'm guessing it would apply to ninjutsu as well, because it's just an alternative casting cost. But chances are as well, none of your opponents will be running ninjas. No one's going to be running ninjas that I know of. So this is a no-brainer. There's so many things here, I don't think there's enough removal in people's decks to get rid of everything. I think you're pretty safe that once you turn into ninjas, that you'll be staying ninjas with these cards. And there's 2 more cards similar to these. They're not... they don't change into ninjas, but there's one called... they do something different. One's called Cover of Darkness. I have. When it comes into play, you choose a creature type. Creatures of the chosen type have fear, so they can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and black creatures. So that's reducing the chances of being blocked. That costs 1 and a black, so that's insane. And there's one that's basically the exact same card of that called what's it called? That's it. Intimidation. So this is another enchantment. It costs 2 black, 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 so it's more expensive. And creatures you control can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and black creatures. So it's essentially the same card, it just costs more. It's just an extra card to give you an extra option. Very achievable. And I think that's it for turning things into ninjas. So, next up, what have we got? Okay, so next up, we have a few board wipes. There's a few here. They are good. They're not the best, like I said. Having a Cyclonic Rift, which acts as a removal and removing all of your opponent's thing for its like Cyclonic Rift cost or whatever it's called, is just insane. But I have similar cards here. There's 3 cards here. First up, we've got Aether Gale. Costs 3 blue blue, and you return 6 non-land permanents to their owner's hands. So this is probably the best in terms of I can pick 6 things my opponents control. Chances are sometimes they won't have 6 between them and you'll have to return some of your stuff, but that's the risk you run. It's just a way of removing certain things so that you can just get your attacks through. Next up, Coastal Breach. Costs 6 and a blue. However, it has Undaunted. So it costs 1 generic mana less to cast for each opponent. So you're always going to have at least 2 opponents, if not 3. So you'll potentially just be casting it for either 5 or 4. So it's not too bad. And it just returns all non-land permanents to owner's hands. So you'll have to do the same, but we've got low cost, fast playing cards. It's not an issue. Last one, Flood of Tears. Costs 4 blue blue, so it does cost 6. However, it's return all non-land permanents to their owner's hands, including yourself. However, if you return 4 or more non-token permanents you control this way, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So fingers crossed that would apply when you play this. You just chuck another ninja or something out, just something to get you going again, one step ahead of everyone else. So that's it for board wipes. Next up we have some removal, counter spells, things like that, just in case, you never know. So, Counter Squall up first, it costs blue and a black. It says counter target non-creature spell, its controller loses 2 life. Not bad. So, all of my counter spell removals, some of them cost a bit more than a normal, you know, the better ones would, if you like, but there's something extra to them, so not only are you countering a spell, you will be doing something extra. You see what I mean? But not this one. This is 2 blue, counter spell, classic, counter target spell. Destroy all creatures? Nah, it's not happening, mate. Ninjas ain't going anywhere. Next up, Misdirection, cool card. It costs 3 blue blue, quite high you think. However, you can exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay the cost of the card. Perfect, just bin something. But you change the target of target spell with a single target. So not only could you counter, say, someone destroying some of your ninjas, you could then turn it round on them. It's gonna hurt. Fairy Trickery, costs 1 blue blue. Counter target non-fairy spell. If that spell is countered this way, remove it from the game instead of putting it to his owner's graveyard. So you're paying, you know, 3, but you're exiling the spell. They won't be getting it back. And last up, Dissipate. Costs 1 blue blue again. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to his owner's graveyard. Exile. They're not getting it back. There's 2 more actually that I haven't yet received. One is called Spell Crumple. I think it's on the same lines as Dissipate. Yeah, it costs 1 blue blue. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on the bottom of its owner's library instead of into the graveyard. Put Spell Crumple on the bottom of its owner's library. So you get to play this card and it just goes on the bottom of your library. Chances are you may draw it again during the game, who knows. And then the last one I had written down, oh yeah, probably the best instant in this deck for obvious reasons. It's Cryptic Command. It costs 1 blue, 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 and it has 4 options on it, and you get to choose 2 of them. So you can counter target spell, you can return target permanent to its owner's hand, tap all creatures your opponents control, and draw a card. You get to pick 2 of them, obviously tapping down all your opponent's creatures and then swinging in with an army of ninjas is game over. There's no coming back from that. But yeah, great card. You might draw a card, I don't know, counter target spell, return something to their hand. Who knows, it's situational and you have the options to choose. So yeah, that's it for instance removal. Now, last up, before we move on to the lands, which are always important, is extra turn, extra burn. So, I have a handful here of spells that let me take an extra turn. So obviously the idea is you swing in for massive ninja damage, trigger Yuriko, take an extra turn, untap, repeat process. So let's start with the classic Nexus of Fate. Fairly expensive, it costs 5 blue blue. You take an extra turn after this one, but if Nexus of Fate would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal Nexus of Fate and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. So anytime this would hit the graveyard, you shuffle it back into your library. Maybe you get 2 turns out of it. Temporal Mastery up next, costs 5 blue blue as well. You take an extra turn after this one, then you have to exile this card. However, it's got Miracle for 1 and a blue. So if you draw it, if it's the first card you draw this turn, you can pay 1 and a blue to play it straight away, I believe. Yeah, so as soon as you draw it, you can cast it for the Miracle cost, as long as it's the first card you've drawn that turn. So potential for cheaper extra turn, who knows, it could happen. You could manipulate the top deck to make it happen. Khan's Temporal Sundering up next, so this is a legendary sorcery, so it does cost 4 blue blue, but you can only cast it if you control a legendary creature or planeswalker. Now aside from Yuriko, there's 2, 3, maybe 4 other legendaries, so potentially it's doable every time. I don't have any planeswalkers in the deck, but there are plenty of legendary creatures. Target player takes an extra turn after this one, return up to 1 target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, perfect, and then you exile Khan's Temporal Sundering. So not only are you gaining an extra turn, you can return whatever you choose to someone's hand. Last physical one I have here is Temporal Trespass. Now, this costs a lot. It costs 8 blue, blue, blue. However, it has Delve. So, each card you exile from your graveyard while casting this spell pays for 1 generic. So, exile 8 cards, this is only going to cost you 3 blues. Also, it's a good one to have, as if you draw this on a Yuriko trigger, that's 11 damage just from this card to all of your opponents. That's like, what, quarter of their life? Flash before them, gone. See you later. Sayonara Wiener Schnitzel. Take an extra turn after this one, and then you exile the card. There is one other, I believe, for extra turns. Oh yeah, it's a black one. It's the only black extra turn card I have. It's called Temporal Extortion, so it costs 4 black mana. And when you play Temporal Extortion, any player may half his or her life rounded up. If a player does, this gets countered, and you just take an extra turn after this one. So one of your opponents could sacrifice half of their life rounded up to counter that spell to stop you from having an extra turn. It's win-win. You want them to lose life, but you want an extra turn. I don't mind which way it comes out. There are plenty of other ways to get extra turns, as you can see, and potentially that's them dead. They could end up killing themselves just from that card. So yeah, that's it. Last up, we have the mana base, the all-important lands. So let's just start off with... okay, first up, we have fetch lands. Bloodstained Mire. It is the Rakdos one, but you can play it, so I would only be able to search for a swamp with it, but it's just good to have. What other fetches have we got? Oh, Fate, we have a... They're not in the right order. I'm just going to go through the lands and explain them. So there's fetches. There's a lot of blue and black are blessed with dual lands. Good ones as well. I don't use all of them, but I run the ones that are significantly relevant in this deck. So we have the Bloodstained Mire. So that can pay 1 life, tap it, sacrifice, get yourself a swamp. Bajuka Bog. Now, I tend to avoid lands that come in tapped. I have 2, maybe 3 in this deck out of 34. But this is so worth it every time. So it enters tapped. When it enters, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. We usually choose Josh on this channel because he likes to throw things in the grave and then haunt us with them later. And it taps for black mana after that. Next up, Castle Ventris. So it enters tapped unless you control an island. So potentially it will be coming in untapped. It taps for 1 blue, and you can also pay 2 blue to tap it and scry 2. So it's an extra scry card just in case you're stuck. Choked Estuary up next is a dual land. As it enters the battlefield, you may reveal an island or a swamp card from your hand. If you don't, it enters tapped. It's a risk, but hopefully you'll have an island or swamp in hand. You can just reveal it and boom, you're away. And that taps for blue and black, or blue or black, sorry. Next up, Command Tower, no brainer. Taps for 1 of either blue or black in this case. Up next, okay, so we've got Creeping Tar Pit. Now, this does enter tapped, but it taps for blue or black. But you can also pay 1 blue-black, and until end of turn, Creeping Tar Pit becomes a 3/2 blue and black elemental creature and is unblockable. It's still a land. So if you're stuck or you want an extra unblocked attack through for a Yuriko trigger, you know, if you can turn this into a ninja as well, it's there. So it comes in tapped, but you can, you know, a turn after, turn it into an unblockable creature. Perfect. Next. Drowned Catacomb. It enters tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. Chances are we'll have enough basics in this deck to make sure that it comes in untapped and it taps for blue or black. Evolving Wilds up next. Mana fixing. So we've got Evolving Wilds and the Terramorphic Expanse. And we also have a Fabled Passage, which is basically the same. You tap and sacrifice, search for a basic land, comes in tap, and shuffle your library. But if you control 4 or more lands, you get to untap that basic you just searched for. So that's okay. Cool land. Great one coming up next. We have Morphic Pool. Blue-black land. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more opponents. I've always got 2 or more opponents. It's never coming in tapped. It taps for blue or black. Next up, fetch land, blue-black, Polluted Delta. Simple, tap it, pay 1 life, sacrifice it, search for an island or swamp, put it onto the battlefield, shuffle your library. Reliquary Tower up next. This is here just to, well, you get a colourless mana from it, but it also gives you no maximum hand size, which is perfect because you're going to be drawing a lot of cards in this deck. It's the only no maximum hand size card I have in this deck, so if it doesn't come out towards the start, I do have to bin off creatures and things, but there's enough cards in this deck to always be doing something lethal. River of Tears next. So this is a blue-black land. However, comes in untapped. When you tap it, you can tap it for blue mana unless you played a land the same turn. So it says if you played a land this turn, add black to your mana pool instead. So essentially, if you're playing lands every turn, it's only going to tap for black. But if you miss a land drop or don't play a land, I don't know why you wouldn't. Say you miss a land drop, you can tap for blue. Rogue's Passage up next, no brainer, taps for colourless, you can pay for, tap it, target creature can't be blocked this turn. Unblocked attack, that's what you want. Sunken Hollow up next. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. That's doable. Taps for blue or black. Tainted Isle is a great card. So you can tap to add 1 colourless mana to your mana pool, or you can tap to add blue or black to your mana pool, but you can only do that if you control a swamp. You're probably going to control a swamp, so you'll be getting access to those colours on that. Terramorphic Expanse we covered. Underground River up next. This is another, it's similar to Tainted Isle. You tap it for 1 generic mana, or you can tap to add blue or black, but it deals 1 damage to you. So it's kind of like the Talisman of Dominance. Was it the Dominance one? Yeah. So you can tap for blue or black, but you have to take damage. If you need to do it. Watery Grave up next. You can pay 2 life to have it come in untapped. Great land. You're just going to pay the 2 life obviously every time. Taps for blue and black. And the last land in this deck, the final card of the deck, Shizo Death's Storehouse. So this comes in untapped. You tap it for a black mana. And you can also pay a black mana, tap it, and target legendary creature gains fear until end of turn. So it's a good way of, if you know that fear works against one of your opponents, if you're stuck, you can just pay a black, tap that, give a legendary fear, get the attack through. That's all there is to it. And that's it. Ninjas. What's more to be said? There'll be a link for this deck on to the tappedout.net account that I just finished up, so you'll be able to see the full deck list, copy it, do what you want with it, change it up, let me know what you think. This deck's done now for me. That's the final incarnation, if you like. Please like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell, ping-a-ling-a-ling, and yeah, stay tuned for another deck tech very soon. I will be back with something even more horrific. Laters!